The night was buzzing with excitement. The air outside the venue was filled with anticipation as guests gathered for the exclusive private event. Inside, a sea of elegantly dressed people mingled, their voices creating a soft hum of conversation. The event was known for attracting the city's elite, a mix of business tycoons, celebrities, and socialites. It wasn't every day that people were invited to such a high-profile gathering. Goldie Hawn was one of the names on the guest list. Known for her dazzling career in Hollywood, Goldie was a favorite among fans for her charm and energy. Her presence at the event was something everyone had been waiting for. She had a way of lighting up the room, no matter where she went. As the clock ticked closer to the evening's start, whispers began circulating among the crowd. Goldie Hawn was on her way. People eagerly exchanged excited comments, knowing that her arrival would be one of the highlights of the night. All eyes were on the entrance, waiting for the moment when the legendary actress would walk through the door. When Goldie Hawn finally arrived, she stepped out of the car with that signature smile, wearing an elegant gown that shimmered under the lights. Her hair was styled perfectly, and her presence was magnetic. The crowd caught sight of her, and gasped in admiration. She was, without a doubt, the star of the event. Everything seemed perfect, but no one knew that things were about to take an unexpected turn. Goldie Hawn's car pulled up to the venue, the sleek black vehicle gliding smoothly to the front entrance. The moment the doors opened, a hush fell over the crowd. People's heads turned, eyes wide with excitement as they caught sight of her. It wasn't every day that someone of her stature arrived at such a high-profile event. She stepped out gracefully, one hand adjusting her elegant gown, the other resting by her side. The shimmering fabric caught the light, making her stand out even more in the crowd of beautifully dressed guests. Her blonde hair was styled in soft waves, her makeup subtly enhancing her natural features. There was no mistaking the aura she carried, a mix of warmth, confidence, and timeless beauty. As she walked towards the entrance, the buzz in the air grew louder. People whispered to each other, some gasping in disbelief. "It's Goldie," one woman whispered, barely able to contain her excitement. A few others quickly pulled out their phones, hoping to snap a picture, though they all knew this was a private event, and photos were strictly prohibited. Goldie flashed her iconic smile as she greeted a few familiar faces in the crowd, her charm working as effortlessly as ever. It wasn't just her looks that had people captivated, it was the kindness that radiated from her. She had a way of making everyone around her feel like they were the most important person in the room. She reached the entrance, where the security guards stood. One of them, recognizing her immediately, greeted her with a polite nod. "Good evening, Miss Hawn," he said, his voice respectful but professional. Goldie smiled back, ready to enter, her face lighting up as she prepared to enjoy the evening. But little did she know, this would be the moment that would change everything. Goldie Hawn's smile faded just slightly as she reached the security checkpoint. She had been to countless events like this before, and she knew the drill: show your name on the list, get the green light, and enjoy the night. It was supposed to be a seamless process, but something felt off. The security guard, a tall man with a stern face, looked at the clipboard in his hands, his expression unreadable. Goldie stepped forward, ready to hand over her invitation, but he didn't immediately acknowledge her presence. "May I help you?" she asked, her voice still warm but tinged with a hint of curiosity. The guard glanced up from the list and gave a tight smile. "I'm sorry, ma'am, you're not on the guest list for tonight's event." Goldie blinked, a slight confusion crossing her face. She had been personally invited, after all. She had even confirmed her attendance with the organizers just earlier in the day. There must have been some mistake. She took a step closer, her voice calm but firm. "I'm Goldie Hawn. I was invited. Could you please check again?" The guard didn't budge. Instead, he double-checked the list, scanning it from top to bottom. The guests around her began to whisper softly, their voices growing louder with each passing second. One of the guests, a man in a black tuxedo, leaned in and whispered to his companion. Did they really just deny Goldie Hawn entry? The words hung in the air, almost too shocking to be true. How could something like this happen? Goldie stood still, waiting for a response, but none came right away. The crowd's eyes were fixed on the scene unfolding before them, and it was as if time slowed down for just a moment. There was a palpable tension in the air, The excitement of her arrival had quickly shifted to confusion, then to disbelief. The guard looked back up at her. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't let you in without confirmation from the event organizers." His voice was matter of fact, but there was no hint of recognition, no apology. Just a rigid professionalism that only added to the awkwardness of the situation. Goldie's smile faded completely, replaced by a look of genuine concern. She took a deep breath and glanced around, the murmurs of the crowd growing louder, more pointed. People started to exchange glances, wondering if this was some sort of misunderstanding, or worse, if something more was going on. The tension in the air was thick, guests shuffled nervously, some trying to get a better look, others still shocked that the beloved actress was being denied entry. And then, it hit her. There was something far more serious going on than a simple mix-up. The moment of truth was coming, and the crowd waited with bated breath to see how this situation would unfold. Goldie Hawn stood frozen for a moment, her mind racing. The crowd around her had fallen silent, each person straining to hear the next words, the next explanation. Her eyes briefly darted toward the guests in the distance, hoping to catch someone's attention. She had to figure out what had gone wrong. She had been invited, she knew she was expected here. But why was she being turned away? The security guard didn't say anything more. His posture was stiff, like he was waiting for something, anything, that could change the situation. But Goldie wasn't sure what that something was. She glanced at the other security guards, hoping one of them might have a different approach, a more flexible solution. But no one stepped forward. The murmurs in the crowd started to grow louder, people exchanging confused looks. "This is insane," a man in a white suit muttered under his breath. "I can't believe this is happening." Others joined in, their voices low but carrying the weight of their disbelief. How could they deny her entry? One woman whispered, her hand covering her mouth. "Doesn't anyone know who she is?" Goldie could feel their eyes on her, the weight of their stares pressing down. Some seemed sympathetic, others puzzled, but no one seemed to know what to do. It was as if everyone was waiting for someone to step in, to make sense of the situation, but no one did. As the moments passed, Goldie's calm demeanor began to waver. The polite smile she had worn so confidently earlier was gone. Instead there was a slight tightening around her eyes, a flicker of frustration that no one could miss. She had been a part of the entertainment world for decades, and this wasn't something that had ever happened to her before. She wasn't just any guest, she was a Hollywood legend, someone who had shared the screen with some of the greatest actors of her time. Yet, here she was, standing outside an event that she was supposed to be a part of, denied entry for reasons that made no sense. The tension in the air was thick now, like the whole crowd was holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. Whispers turned to quiet conversations, and a few guests pulled out their phones, no longer trying to hide their curiosity. But the security guards stood their ground, offering no explanation, no apology. It was as if they were waiting for the organizers to clear this up, but there was no one in sight to help. Goldie turned back toward the entrance, her frustration beginning to bubble to the surface. She could hear the murmurs growing louder, and with each passing second, it was becoming more and more clear that the evening was quickly spiraling out of her control. Just as the murmurs reached a fever pitch, a voice cut through the tension. It wasn't from the crowd, nor was it one of the security guards. It came from behind the velvet ropes, and for a moment everyone turned to see who it was. A woman dressed in a sharp suit and wearing a confident smile approached the scene. She was one of the event organizers, her expression calm but authoritative. Goldie recognized her immediately. It was Jessica, the lead coordinator of the event, someone she had worked with on more than one occasion. "Goldie, I'm so sorry for this," Jessica said, her voice steady as she walked toward the security guards. She gestured to the crowd to give them space. "Let's clear this up right now." Goldie's relief was almost immediate, but the confusion still lingered. "What happened?" "I was confirmed for this event," she said, her voice softer now, but still carrying an edge of frustration. Jessica nodded sympathetically, her eyes scanning the security guards. "It was a mix-up. It turns out there was a technical issue with the guest list. You're listed as attending, but the system accidentally flagged your invitation as not confirmed. Goldie's brows furrowed in disbelief. A technical issue, she repeated. She couldn't help but feel the irony in the situation. How was it that such a small mistake could cause such a huge disruption? The crowd had started to quiet down as they overheard the explanation. Their eyes darted between Goldie and Jessica, trying to piece together what had just happened. Some looked relieved that the situation was finally being explained, others still seemed incredulous. Jessica turned back to the security guard, who had first denied Goldie entry. "She's on the list, please let her in." The security guard's face remained neutral, though a slight apology flickered across his features. He nodded, stepping aside to let Goldie pass. But just as Goldie started to move forward, a man in the crowd, a familiar face, stepped forward. "Wait a minute," he said, his voice carrying just enough to get everyone's attention. "Wasn't there a new rule this year about only allowing certain guests?" Goldie paused, her heart sinking. Could there be another reason for the denial? Was there something else at play here? Goldie Hawn paused, her body tense as the man's words hung in the air. The crowd fell silent, all eyes on her as they awaited her response. The question seemed innocent enough, but it carried an underlying tone, one that suggested there was more to the story than a simple mix-up with the guest list. The man who had spoken was tall, with slicked back hair and an expensive suit. He stood with his arms crossed, a skeptical look on his face. "I heard something about a policy this year, only certain guests are allowed entry," he repeated, his gaze not leaving Goldie. Goldie's heart skipped a beat. For a split second, doubt crept into her mind. Was there some hidden agenda she hadn't been told about? Had the event organizers put a limit on who could attend, regardless of invitations? Jessica, who had been trying to smooth things over, quickly stepped in. Her face, usually calm and collected, now showed signs of frustration. "That's not the case," she said firmly, turning toward the man. "There has been no such policy. Goldie is not only confirmed but also personally invited." The issue was purely technical. The crowd remained quiet, their curiosity piqued. The tension between Jessica and the man was palpable. For a moment it felt as though everything hinged on their words. Would the truth come out? Would the crowd finally understand? Goldie's mind raced as she glanced around. It wasn't just the man in the suit who had raised doubts. Others in the crowd were beginning to murmur again, casting uncertain glances toward the entrance. They had witnessed something strange unfold, and now they were wondering if there was something more, something bigger at play. Goldie didn't want to make the situation worse by drawing too much attention to herself, but she couldn't help but feel the sting of it all. She had been caught off guard by the denial, the technical glitch, and now this lingering question. This wasn't how her night was supposed to go. She had planned on mingling, enjoying the evening, and perhaps even reconnecting with old friends. Instead, she was standing at the gates, uncertain whether the evening would go forward at all. Jessica, sensing the growing discomfort, turned back to Goldie. "Let's just go inside. Everything is fine now." Her voice was reassuring, but Goldie could tell she was just as unsettled by the turn of events. Goldie nodded, offering a polite smile, but her mind was far from at ease. As she moved toward the entrance, the crowd's reaction seemed to shift. Some people looked relieved, while others remained unsure. It was clear that whatever had happened would not be forgotten quickly. The air was thick with whispers, questions, and lingering uncertainty. What had truly happened behind the scenes? And why had such a small issue escalated into something so dramatic? As Goldie entered the event, her thoughts continued to swirl. She had been in the public eye long enough to know that stories could take unexpected turns. What had started as a small mix-up had now become a talking point for the evening. The mood in the air had changed, and it was clear the crowd would be talking about this moment long after the night was over.